Welcome to The Maintenance Mindset, an audio-video podcast brought to you by the Multifamily Media Network. I'm your host, Paul Rhodes, and over the more than 3 decades in the apartment industry, I've had roles that include being on-site, providing services as a vendor, creating and delivering multiple education programs, and active association work. This podcast is centered on the often overlooked role that our on-site maintenance workers play. You know, the men and women that respond in the middle of the night to the toilet call, or the after hours, it's really hot in my apartment request, or my favorite, my ring fell down the drain, get over here now. In other words, the often unsung heroes who are responsible for asset preservation and resident satisfaction. Working in multifamily maintenance provides interesting, sometimes amusing, and often fascinating stories and viewpoints. My encouragement to you is this: whatever you do it with a maintenance mindset. Hey there! This episode of The Maintenance Mindset is brought to you by a news feed. Whatever news feed you want it to be, because actually that's where today's topic came from. The topic is one that I admit I have a little bit of personal, emotional stake. As a representative of Generation X, I remember a time when we had telephones that were attached to cords on the wall. Yes, friends, I've been doing apartment maintenance long enough that I remember having a pager. And when you went on call, you had to be sure that when you left the house, you had a pocket full of quarters. Because you see, in the olden times, when the pager went off, you had to stop at this device that was on the side of the road at most gas stations. A lot of stores had them. They were called a payphone. That's right, friends. I'm old enough to remember when we did not have this digital umbilical cord along our side or in our pockets 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 366 days out of the year. We had phones that were attached to walls, and we used them. Yes, for those of you who have ever called me, and if I wasn't able to answer, you've gotten my passive-aggressive voicemail that basically says, "You called me, now leave me a message." I actually remember in the 80s when answering machines were this amazing technology that would allow us to screen calls, and we would listen to them. Now, times have changed. Yes, I've mentioned it before. I'm an old man now, and I'm fine with that. But the problem is, we live in a world that is connected. And if these past 5-6 years have proven nothing else, we need each other. Our mental, our physical health depends on the connections that we make with and with each other. We continue to add more and more technology to our lives to impersonalize the data. And that's kind of the big background for today's topic. You see, an article came up on my news feed that the headline really caught my attention. It says, "Unbelievable. Gen Z has fallen victim to telephobia." Now, I admit, I've never heard of telephobia before, but just the word, I knew exactly what it meant, because the article goes on to say, and before I go any further, I have to admit, I really enjoyed reading it. It's by a gentleman by the name of Rezeki Amiri, and I apologize. I have a feeling I'm garbling the name. But Mr. Amiri, thank you very much for bringing this to my attention, because I had never thought of what all the implications are until I read your article. And what he says is, to continue the headline, Gen Z has fallen victim to telephobia. 56% of young people think that answering a call is a sign of bad news. Okay, that headline, I can believe it. I've actually I've taken a page off of our fellow podcast host, Rodney. His show, Rooms with Rodney, he travels around the country, much like I do, and he goes in and approaches apartment communities and shops them. And then he talks about his experiences while shopping those apartments. Well, I decided that as I travel the country, I'm going to stop into apartment communities and take a look at them from a maintenance perspective and just see what I see. In many cases, I'm not even going to go in the office because our apartment communities are what we see when we shop them around. But here recently, which goes perfectly in tandem with this article, our maintenance service professionals are, if I'm honest, not doing a good job when it comes to telephone etiquette and courtesy. I can't say that I think it's generational, because what I'm seeing when I drive through, and even more than that, what I'm seeing in public is just, if I'm honest, it's awful. It's horrible. The perception that we are giving off when we do not do a good job with telephone service, like responding to the telephone, is horrifying if we think about it. Now, Mr. Amiri's article, it goes on to say that young people are refusing to answer phone calls, 23% ignoring them entirely. I admit, I am not in that 23%. Granted, I'm not considered a young person anymore. But the article it goes on to talk about that it's representative of Gen Z, a generation that has lived with smartphone technology for almost all of their lives. They've had the power of a computer in their pocket their entire life. You mention a flip phone, and they're thinking of the thing that when it flips open, it has a screen on the full device. I'm old enough to remember when we had to actually text one another by pounding on the numerical keys multiple times to get the letters to show up on the 8-bit LCD screen that was only available in gray and that green color. And that's just old. And yes, I know several of you are thinking, hey, okay, boomer. Fine. I'll take that comment. I think that is a badge of honor. That is a compliment in my world. But the scary thing is that as of 2025, Generation Z represents, which Generation Z, for the purpose of the article, is for persons between the age of 16 and 30 years old. And as of today, March of 2025, Generation Z represents 27% of our current workforce. That's over 1/4 of the people who are working and getting a paycheck. Little side note, we need to attract more of them to the apartment maintenance industry. We need people. We need them desperately, and it's not getting better quickly. But that's another show. In this case, we're talking about telephones, and what Mr. Amiri says is that 56% of Generation Z associate phone calls with bad news. Now, when I visit a property and I go in to the office, the number of times the phone just rings and people are on their computer or people are walking around the office and going to do something and don't jump to the telephone, the former salesperson in myself just cringes. The Generation X person that I am, that remembers whenever the phone rang, that was the only way our customers had the opportunity to reach out and contact us. Yes, I know in today's modern age, we've got the resident portals. We have text messaging. We have emails. We have DocuSign. We have web-based communication methods out the wazoo, let alone Teams and Zoom and all of the other various hosting platforms that we end up using. And they're all great. But you know, the telephone is still absolutely essential. It is a great way for our residents to let us know when we have to respond to an emergency. Even when it's not a dire emergency and we need to know about something that we need to get into our resident's apartment and fix, the more complete communication that can be garnered from a telephone two-way conversation could speed up the completion of work orders and increase the accuracy of the parts that we need when we go to a resident's apartment. It could do it immeasurably, huge amounts of things. Now, in the article, it goes on to say that this phenomenon of associating phone calls with bad news is referred to as telephobia. And it's more involved than a preference for texting over talking. It reveals deeper behavioral changes driven by the need for control, privacy, and reduced anxiety in digital communication. Let's stop there just for a moment. I got the opportunity to talk with a young lady here a couple of weeks ago about the absolute admitted serious medical condition of anxiety. And for those in the audience who have that condition, my heart goes out to you. It is debilitating. It's horrifying. And that diagnosis is one that you have my profound empathy. At the same time, I do recognize the amount of times I overhear people talking about my anxiety taking over, or I have anxiety about doing something. There's a balance there somewhere. I don't know where it is. But anxiety over answering a phone is one I just cannot relate to. I really cannot. Worrying that when the phone rings, what the article is talking about is that when a phone rings, people have such a negative response that it changes their well-being. Maybe it's me. Maybe there is something deficient in me, and I'm willing to learn. But I don't get it. When a phone rings, somebody is trying to reach out to us for some reason. Whatever that reason is, it's an opportunity to solve a problem. Or maybe the extended warranty is about to go out on your car or somebody's non-existent car. Yes, I recognize there is a lot of junk and spam and whatever crappy phone calls. Fine. If you want to look at your cell phone with all the different spam filters or possible crank calls that happen today and use it for a tool to weed out the bad stuff. I mean, the number of calls I get on a daily basis that want to know if I will sell my house every day, they're annoying, but they're phone calls. Yes, use the block features. I do on my cell phone. That's something that my Generation X body has never had to deal with until we got into modern times. But that is still no reason in my mind to have what the article references as anxiety about answering the phone. And this is important from a business standpoint. Maintenance professionals, the absolute best way for us to find out details about our responses is verbal, two-way communication. The ability for someone on the other end of the phone to make a statement, and the ability for me to hear that statement with a potentiality of gathering some nonverbal communication in the midst of that statement allows me to become much more precise in my triage, in my diagnosis of the problem, so that I can serve them faster. There are a lot of skills that we need to take into consideration for having the ability for two-way communication. It is immeasurable. It's not all bad news. When the phone rings, it is not all bad news. I would be willing to go out on a limb, probably way far out on the limb, and say that when the phone rings, it's majority intermediate news, to where it's not good or bad, it's just news, or good. In other words, more often than not, good things come out of answering the phone. Oh, and by the way, having the ability for that instantaneous two-way conversation is a huge benefit. It's amazing. Not to mention the amount of fun you can have when you talk to other people, sharing ideas, sharing problems, yes, sharing sorrows. Even if it is bad news, the ability for that bad news to be tempered by care, empathy, emotion. All of these things don't come through when we get a text message. So after this quick break, we're going to talk about, as maintenance professionals, skills and things that we need to keep in mind for doing the job of telephone communication. Be right back. Today, I have something a little bit different for you, and that is a little bit of personal philosophy. See, I live life by 3 rules. 2 of those rules are emblazoned on my dining room wall. My wife made a quilted wall hanging that have 2 of those rules on them, because the 3rd rule is enforced all the time. The first 2 might be optional. You see, it's the 3 rules of coffee. Rule number 1 says, life is too short for bad coffee. Rule number 2, bad coffee is better than no coffee, because of rule number 3, which is always in force. No coffee, no worky. I believe in coffee. Matter of fact, I just about always have a cup nearby that is full of that wonderful, velvety, fantastic elixir of life. The reason why I'm talking to you about this today is we now have the Multifamily Media Network Grounds for Connection coffee. And if you haven't tried this yet, I can tell you from experience, it is definitely rule number 1 coffee. This stuff is fantastic. It's a mixture of beans from Central America, South America, and Indonesia. It definitely has a chocolatey note to it that is the fantastic way I use to stay caffeinated. And it's not Rule 2 coffee. Because remember Rule 3, no coffee, no working. So if you're a late night maintenance team member who has to be up either early or way later than what you want, the next day, do yourself a favor. Get yourself a bag of Grounds for Connection from the Multifamily Media Network website. Thank you for your attention and have a caffeinated day. All right, now that we're back, yes, I am taking a break for a sip of coffee out of the Multifamily Media Network cup. And included in that is the wonderful Multifamily Media Network coffee. Yeah, I know, blatant sponsor, but it's good coffee. I don't know what I have to say. By the way, it does go to our topic today. The topic we're discussing is telephone service. And the reason why it goes is, remember, when the telephone rings, you have the ability to pause for a moment. The telephone will ring several times. If somebody wants to call you and talk to you, let it ring for an extra beat. Take a breath. Center yourself. Think about how you want to respond to that phone call. I'm even parsing this or framing this late at night. When you have an emergency phone call, it's okay to take a beat. Yeah. If you have Multifamily Media Network's coffee, take a beat. Have a sip. When you answer the phone, if you answer it thinking that it's going to be bad news, guess what? It comes through in your voice. As a matter of fact, I've actually seen some sales training, and sales training is part psychological. And when that is done over the phone, there are tips and tricks that you can use over the phone. As a matter of fact, unless you're driving, if you're driving, don't do what I'm about to ask you. But if you're not driving, close your eyes for a minute, especially if you're watching this on video. Close your eyes. Hi there. Hi there. Did you hear a difference? The difference was I was smiling the first time I said hi there. The second time, I said it with a neutral voice, or neutral face. Here's my question. Could you tell the difference? I just about put money on the fact that you could tell a difference because it matters. And the fact that it matters proves the point. Telephone communication is a more complete method of communication. Even better is in person, when you not only can hear what somebody is saying, you can see the expression on their face. Not only their face, like, you know, if you're watching me on video, you can see me from just about shoulder level up. And there is more communicated just by being able to see what I'm saying and how I'm moving my hands and how I'm emoting. But even that is incomplete because there is an imperceptible, it's proven by science, there's an imperceptible energy level that is given off by in-person communication. Well, we all know that we don't have the ability for our office hours or for all of the reasons for people to come to our office, to our maintenance shop, to track us down on the property and tell us what's going on. However, they do have the ability to call. So, how are we responding to telephone calls? Yes, I know. I'm kind of tying in the office to this because our office serves an important purpose. When a resident calls with a maintenance service request, or any request for that matter, first of all, answer it. Just like we've been saying, you can take a pause, take a drink of wonderful beverage. Second, answer it with a service mentality. Remember, we're at work. It's not bad news. Okay, if something is broken, you didn't break it. If something is malfunctioning, you didn't make it malfunction. As a matter of fact, you are in a prime location and opportunity to provide service. Answer the phone that way. You want to help. Go approach it from that standpoint. It's okay for it to be a two-way conversation instead of just one direction. You, the person answering, can ask questions. Okay, so let's begin with the answer. When you answer, remember, first of all, you are a human being. I actually had an assistant manager that I worked with years ago that when you talked to her in person, she was very animated. She was up. She was wonderful to speak with. And then the phone would ring. She'd pause for a second, get herself centered, and she'd answer the phone. Thank you for calling AB Apartments. We're happy here to serve you today. It's a great, wonderful day. How may I help you? No lie. It was monotone. It was clear. Answer the phone as a human. If you have a speech or a spiel that you want to say when you answer it, I'll leave that up to your employer and what you do. But the one thing I would ask is please keep it short. I don't want an entire paragraph about what's going on just to let you know that the gate isn't opening properly. I actually prefer this is Paul when I answer the phone, or hello, but put emotion into it. You are a unique individual, and I am glad you are there on the other end of the phone. I'm just thankful a lot of times that somebody answered the phone. But if they don't answer the phone, I will leave a message. Oh, yes. Okay, I've already mentioned the voicemail thing and how old I am, but let's go one step further of that. The number of times that I go to call somebody that I have their cell phone number and I get their cell phone, and then I get the generic anonymous cell phone message for voicemail. You know it. You have reached phone number 123-4567-8910. Please leave a message. Do yourself a favor. At least record your name. Let the caller know that they have reached the person that they're intending to reach. If not, fine, they can hang up. Which leads me to the second point. If you, the person receiving the phone call, are not going to listen to voicemails, shut off your voicemails or leave a voicemail message. Record one. Say, hi, this is Janet, Bob, Jones, Gertrude, whatever your name is. I'm sorry. Hi, this is me. I don't listen to voicemail messages, so if you leave one, I'm going to delete it immediately, or it's going to be deleted because I don't listen to it. Text me instead. Beep. At least tell me what I can expect. As a person who's calling you, set my expectations. For that matter, if either that or just don't set up your voicemail at all. You'll get a generic message. Most cell phone services now, you'll get a generic message that says the person you are trying to reach has not set up their voicemail. Even that is better than having a voicemail message. I, the caller, leave one for you, the recipient, and then you don't ever listen to it. This is a matter of courtesy. Offices, set up a scheduled time to collect your messages. Oh, and please make it more than once a day. First thing in the morning, first thing before or after lunch, and approximately an hour before closing time. That way, if there's something going on an hour before closing time, you can get it. The number of times that maintenance has to stay late and they go to respond to a resident emergency, that the resident says, didn't you get my message? I called about 3 hours ago. The office was still open and nobody answered the phone. I left a message and I had to call back. We're setting up our maintenance teams for poor service. Not only that, we're setting them up to get yelled at and to have disgruntled residents. I don't want that. I want to be able to provide good service. Now, here's some other things that we need to be sure. We started with the beginning. Answer the phone as a human. End the phone as a human too. Have a conclusion. Thank you for calling. I'm glad we talked today. Thank you. And if not, or nothing else, goodbye. The number of times I've been standing next to somebody who's answered the phone in public and they just stop talking and click hang up, that's rude. Okay, I'm not a part of that communication, but if I was, it's rude. How do I know that you actually heard the last thing I said, or did we get cut off? Goodbye. Thank you. Be pleasant. It's okay. Remember, the phone does not mean bad news. In the event it does mean bad news, maybe it's something we can change. When you answer the phone, be aware of your surroundings. Last week, I was flying home from California, and we landed on the plane, and the young lady, one row ahead of me and 2 seats over. We land, the plane stops and begins to taxi, and all of a sudden, she starts talking at her phone. We're on an airplane, and she is talking like this to her phone. Now, for those of you who can't see the video, I'm holding the phone up directly in front of my face, partially blocking the camera. That means she's on a video call. We're on an airplane, on an active taxiway, in public, everybody's shoulder to shoulder in the sardine can that is an airplane, and she's making or taking a video call. First, can we just have a rule? No video calls in public. Second, remember, when you look at your cell phone, there are 2 areas for your audio usage. There is one area at the top of the phone that has a speaker. There's another area at the bottom of the phone that has a microphone. Yes, friends, this device is intended to be put up next to your face. Place the speaker area on the top of the phone on your ear and place the bottom of the phone next to your face. And then you may talk at actually a less than normal volume, and the amount of equalization and digital audio processing that the cell phone does is actually pretty amazing. It can pick up, I don't know, the wings beating on a butterfly. I mean, it has a very, very sensitive microphone that does a good job of shutting out other noise. It's my understanding that there actually is a little bit of voice recognition software in there that will pick up your voice over other people's voice. It's a proximity thing. And if you're in public, do not carry on a voicemail call unless, not a voicemail call, a speakerphone call, unless it can't be avoided. If it can't be avoided, first of all, let the person on the other end of the phone know that you're in public. Okay, so to summarize, no video calls in public ever. I don't know of a reason in public for a video call to ever occur. The number of times I've seen people in airports walk into walls or stanchions or doors because they were focused on the video call is hilarious. That is actually a joy when I go through an airport. But video calls in public, never. Speaker calls in public, rarely. When they do occur, let the person you're speaking with know you're in public. That way they maybe need to moderate their language or the topics they discuss. Third, keep the volume level normal if it has to be a speaker call. Use the phone up beside your head. Yes, I know. This is where, again, we go back to okay, boomer. Fine. I'm a boomer. Life goes on. Next thing. Please. Oh, please. And this is things I've seen a lot when I drive through properties, looking at maintenance associates, even some of our office team members as well. Do not, unless you're on an active call, have your earbud things in your ear holes. And if you are, don't be in public. The number of times that I see people trying to carry on conversations, or as an instructor, as a facilitator, the number of times people in my audience have on their speakerphones, their earbuds, is infinite. That's rude. Tell it like it is. If you are somewhere, pay attention to the person in front of you. Give the perception that you are paying attention to the person in front of you. That means take out the Borg headset unless you're on the phone. And if you're on the phone, go somewhere private. If you're in my class and you have a Borg headset, I will say something. If you're in anybody's class and you have on the little earbud thingies, whatever they're called, how is the person who's instructing you to know that you're actually paying attention to them? Or maybe you're listening to the latest sports ball game on whatever device during whatever time it is that you're supposed to be paying attention to the class. If you're not going to be in the class, don't show up. Man, am I really sounding like the old fart who's 5 feet away from the front porch yelling at kids, get off my lawn? Okay, fine. That's me. Yes, I realize there's a lot of ranting here, but it is what it is. Okay, let's address something else here. Yes, Generation Z is afraid of answering the phone. 56% are afraid of answering the phone. And it said in the article, the reason why is that they're afraid it's going to be bad news incoming. And Generation Z, it goes on to say, prefers text messaging. There are times when I actually prefer text messaging. It's, like the article says, it's asynchronous, which means I can text something to somebody. They receive the message on their schedule, not on my schedule. And that's okay. If I need an immediate answer, I'm going to call you. If you don't pick up the phone, why didn't I text you in the first place? It's not always bad news. I guess that's kind of the theme that gets repeated here. If we're going to text, here's some tips, some thoughts. If a question is asked when texting, the answer needs to be yes or no, period. If any other definition or description or answer is required beyond yes or no, then the text should be abandoned and a phone call should occur. I've worked with people that they only wanted to communicate by text message. And after an hour of back and forth texting, and that's not an exaggeration. If anything, it's an underestimation of the time involved. But after an hour of texting back and forth, typing with our thumbs, or maybe using the voice to text changes, I looked back over the text and realized that what we talked about through texting could have actually been solved with about a 4-minute phone call. Yeah. Do yourself a favor and look back through the library or records of your recent text messages and how many of that could have been solved by phone calls. I know the benefit of text messaging is it is asynchronous. But there is so much of communication is lost by text messaging. Keep it pleasant. Don't use emojis unless you know the person on the other end of the text knows what the emoji is. I just found out that there are some fruits and vegetables that don't mean the fruit or vegetable that they are. And as the old fart that I am, I admit I don't have that particular dictionary. I admit I send a happy face just because you lose the tone of voice when you text message. I want other people to know that my response is a happy one. I want them to be happy. Why not talk on the phone? We can get that across with our voice. With a text message, when you're talking about it, you don't have that tone of voice. Conversations are for voice. And pick up the phone. Oh, and I don't know who needs to hear this. Call your parents. That's a side note. Your parents, chances are older than you are and would love to talk with you on the phone. As we close this out, maintenance professionals, the telephone is a tool. It is a tool. It has a use. Get proficient at it. Plan to use the phone. Practice using the phone. Like all of our skills, if we don't use them, we don't get better at them. As a matter of fact, they atrophy. They get worse. Thank you for joining me today on this wonderfully enlightening episode of The Maintenance Mindset. Have a fantastic rest of your week, and I'll see you somewhere.
Thank you for listening to this episode of The Maintenance Mindset. I hope you take away ideas that apply to your current and future career goals. Please check out Maintenance Mindset Minute to hear short-form, high-impact, applicable, maintenance-centered information. Whatever you do today, do it with a maintenance mindset. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, comment, and subscribe. Visit multifamilymedianetwork.com to learn more about our other industry podcasts, thought pieces, and sponsorship opportunities. I'll see you somewhere.